Thank you, Hannah. And I know you're sharing your own slides.
Yes, I've learned my lesson. Okay, great. So I think the next session should be really interesting for people who are looking at serving smallholder agriculture value chains and looking at rural customers. So we will hear from Nairos, but also we have brought a savings at the Frontier partner, a digital agriculture platform who's working to serve smallholders. And because we don't have a lot of time to share all of the findings that we've generated and the lessons we've learned, we want to focus on a key challenge, and that's last mile delivery. And of course, that's even more pronounced where you're working with smallholder communities. I mean, there's a lot more material on this last mile delivery and proximity challenge that you can look at, that this Savings at the Frontier program has generated over time, because it was one of the key challenges. So I've put them on the slide, and when you get the deck, you will have all the links where you can go. But just maybe to give a really short introduction to this, throughout the program, we've struggled to tackle this problem and to measure it properly. And we were challenged in the beginning by this question: what is an urban and what is a rural customer? What can we consider rural? And are people in small towns, for example, or in peri-urban areas with a similar non-access to services delivery considered rural? Can we do that? So it was a question on program level, but also in terms of how far is it viable to push the frontier into rural areas and serve rural customers with the value propositions that the FSP partners were testing and developing. So it was also a business case question, and I think in the fintech context, of course, that was even louder, especially for the ones that were trying to serve the smallholder communities with platform approaches. And there are different angles to the proximity challenge. So we understood that there was no structured or systematic way to record the location of the customers. So where's the group? Where's the smallholder plot? Where's the community? Even for organizations, community-based or NGOs working in those areas, most of the knowledge was in the field officers' heads, where to find the people when, because proximity is also a temporal planning challenge, not just a spatial one. And so we understood that the customer location was unknown, but then also the location of the agent or the field officer, or that human element, was often unknown to head office or to the FSPs. So it was difficult to plan a viable agent location, or to think about a route for a field officer to take that is most efficient. We didn't know so many things in this. And so we've developed, and I'm going to introduce a colleague here, Ana Fernandez. We've developed a tool, a proximity tool, and today I'm presenting all the tools that can help FSPs to do that. So basically to record locations, and maybe let me just share with you here. So we can share this link. There is another publicly available tool that you can test. You can install it and use it with Excel. So it's an Excel plugin, and I was going to show this now. And it does help FSPs to start recording locations and using their data, and using data that is publicly available, so street networks, road conditions, weather information, all of the things that you need to know as an FSP if you want to go into an area, population density, and your own data. So the idea was that the FSP can bring data, but also can get data. And I guess the vision was that we wanted to have a tool that allows us to bring the FSP into the field without them having to drive there. Of course, it will not substitute the need to go into the field, but someone in head office will know much more what's going on in the field. And so I hope that, Anna, you have the right to share your screen, and you are able to demo this tool that at the moment exists for all of Ghana and parts of Tanzania. and is available, as I said, as an Excel plugin, so for the rural banks, but then also as an API for the fintech and more tech-centered partner FSPs that we had. Over to you.
Thanks, Anna. So I'll try to do the most brief presentation possible of the demonstration of the tool. As Hannah said, this is based on proximity and therefore location. The tool was purposely made to be user-friendly and easy to use. That's why we coupled with Excel and add a map to Excel, and as Excel adding. It also has a standalone API that you can couple with your own platform. But just to give a demonstration of the tool, I have, based on location, I already have some points here based on latitude, longitude, that gives you a precise location. So if I just throw this into the map, I can know more or less where these points are. I pointed at some, what it looks like, some agricultural fields in Ghana. And then I'll just briefly show you how you can use it, the tool or the Excel add-in inside Excel, just basically like a normal function you'd use in Excel, where you have access to all our functions. So just to quickly know where we are in Ghana, we have administrative levels. We know that we are in Ashanti region, and also we can go on a lower scale and know more where we are in the unrecognizable text. But in any case, we have different functions that, here we go, that gives the information of the location in a map. And we are using all this data comes from, most of it from satellite imagery and open source data. So satellite imagery gives us the chance to look into areas that otherwise we wouldn't have access, or we don't have data in a concise and unbiased way. So we can just, for instance, know the population density that we calculated through machine learning, but also we have access to network coverage. We have access to the terrain and also the urban status. So if it's a rural area, if it's a peri-urban or urban area, we actually have a map that I can just show you. So it's visually more explainable, where the green areas are just rural areas, and population shows you can see the most blue are the most populated areas here. More directly towards agriculture, we can give information where areas are, if we point out to areas where the vegetation grows or there's agriculture activity, we can point out to, for instance, important functions that would give us information about weather. We can go for weather forecasts for a specific location. I'll just put the first point I have here. And this will just give me the forecast for the next days, which we know that it's quite rainy right now, and for the next days to come. But also information of, for instance, how is the health of the vegetation in that area? Is the vegetation getting greener, meaning is it healthier, or is it actually going down on their greenness? You can say it like that. So in their health, does it mean if it's a green kind of crop agriculture, you can actually kind of monitor how is it doing in a certain area, specific area or specific field, depending on the scale. And in that way, we use the vegetation index calculated from satellite imagery. So I can show you a map actually of this vegetation index. And it gives you the redder it is, the driest or less healthy the vegetation is, but also the greener it is, the healthier it gets, or it is the state right now. So that means that we can maybe monitor an area where to see if we can predict on harvest points. So we know that if vegetation or agriculture crop has been harvested, the index will drop on its value. So we have some, I don't know if I have time, but I'll try. We have some functions that shows us that. You can learn that function by monitoring through time. So for instance, if we have we want to know, in order to also to get to know this information, because it's new information we have about the location, we can study the previous years. So this is also temporal. Since 2016, we have data from the previous year, how was the behavior, and that way you understand how it works, the agricultural activity in that area. So if I want to know for the last 60 days, how has the vegetation index behaved for 100 meters, we can understand if it means that it's closer to 1, which is the indicator shows, then I know that it's healthier, close to the healthiest it gets. Or if it's decaying towards 0, then I know that that either vegetation is going less healthier or a harvest point is arriving. So it's something that we have to study the behavior in order to understand how it works. Another interesting or challenge that can happen is that it could be too cloudy if it's rainy, and that's how we also know with the weather forecasts. So because it's satellite imagery, some of type of imagery we can only access as images. So that could give us like a lack of information, but in this case we can know what is happening on the other years to study the behavior. For instance, if I go back to the start and end date, or it can be, for instance, 21 and 22. So I can go back in time, and then also for 100 meters, for example. This takes a little bit more to calculate, so it gives you per month what are the values or the mean values of this indicator. So the mean value would be the most interesting to look at, and you can understand the behavior throughout the months and also including during the rainy seasons, and see that, for instance, the values are going up towards May and June, and then down again, and then up again towards after October and November. So we can see that that's for every month in 2021. We can go back in time and see also how it behaves, and we can make graphs. For the sake of quickness, I will not make here, but you can just grab this data, make a graph on Excel, and understand how it goes instead of looking at the numbers. It's way easier. And then, of course, you can bring your own data to Excel and just use this data as you wish. Other kinds of data that we have include population data, density we have divided by women and men. And other data such as proximity data regarding from A to B, what is the best way to go, or the shortest path, and by bike, walking, and drive, that for the road network. And also isochrons, so for one specific point, how long does it take? 15 minutes, what is the catchment area from one point? In 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, by walking or driving. So that helps us understand and give a bit of insight in these areas that otherwise it's quite hard to get data on. And this, again, based on open source technology and open data. So of course, this would in time be interactive in a way that you can always append data to the system. So you just send your own data or updates to the data. For instance, we use OpenStreetMap, then actually can be edited by anyone in order to update data, for instance, on road network state. And then it's also then automatized, updated to the database. Yes, so the future developments are way more focused on the satellite imagery and how much information and data we can get from it. That will include, for instance, the identification of crop classification, and better scale, but also to tackle this cloudy problem that can happen by using different types of satellite imagery, and using machine learning in order to predict the crop amount, for instance, or crop yield. So this was a very brief look into the tool.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, I know it's a lot, and there are lots of functionalities that we haven't gotten to yet, but just to mention that, for example, this helps with transparency and accountability as well. One of our partner fintechs uses this to see whether the transaction patterns, for example, make sense that are happening in the field in real time, and has been able to detect fraud. And all of these functionalities that you're seeing here make much more sense in the context of agriculture, for example, when you know the weather patterns are shifting due to climate change, for example. You have confirmation of that. If there's like a blight, a disease happening in a certain area, you can go and confirm that without always having to travel. So a lot of this is also transparency and accountability functionalities. And then, of course, we know that farmers do certain things when the first rains are happening, for example. So that's another thing. You need to know exactly what these change events are. And if you have a weather forecast that gives you an alarm, then you know, okay, I have to communicate with the farmers now. My inputs are on the way, so they don't go and buy other inputs, for example. But there are fintechs in the room who are using these kind of solutions. And I know DSS from Ghana is here, and Abid will speak in the Q&A a little bit later. I want to now hand over to BusyTech, one of our partners in Tanzania. Shaw is here, so I hope he can share some of the lessons he's learned with developing a digital platform for financial services and input delivery in Tanzania.
Yeah, my name is Mahamoud Shaw from BusyTech. Hello. Hello, Anna.
We can hear you, yeah. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Mahamoud Shaw from BusyTech. BusyTech is the agri-fintech company established in 2015. We are creating solutions for smallholder farmer and small businesses, which target the smallholder farmer. Currently, we are working with government to the program called subsidy, fertilizer subsidy distribution and payment using our digital platform. Back in 2016, we developed a digital platform called the Kilimo Data Hub, which is an integrated digital platform, identifies farmer, profiling them, and put them at the center, and help them to communicate with other stakeholders like input supplier, off-takers, and the likes. So our journey started in 2018, where we got support from OPM under a Satif project, where we developed the product called Kilimo Akiba. Through our ecosystem approach, we helped the more than 47,000 farmers, link them to access digital services, financial services, and the other relevant services for their businesses and activities. During the time, we link these farmers to two banks, CRDB and the TCB Bank found in Tanzania. Then we help them to do saving for inputs. We managed to collect more than 150,000 USD saving during season 2021-2022, whereby these farmers use the money to buy inputs. So we help them also to, we link them to input suppliers, so they end up getting timely and the affordable inputs during the season. What value we create in our ecosystem approach, we look at financial service provider. They are struggling to get data from the ground truth, whereby we, through our digital platform, we are able to deliver alternative data to help them to creating suitable services, including loans and insurance. Through our partnership with TCB and the CRDB Bank, we are now leveraging on their expertise in the financial service delivery. We worked with them as a super agent so that we can bring services close to the farmer. And during the the seasons that I mentioned, we managed to give the farmer at least relief in terms of saving for inputs and other agricultural activities. Back to the farmers, we also creating value by make sure that we bring services closer to where they are. They are able now to do saving. They are able to get inputs. We do last mile input delivery, where a farmer is not, they are not supposed to go far from where they are staying to get inputs on time. We do last mile delivery because we leverage on the data that we collected. Farmer can order inputs through USSD, and we are able to aggregate their order and take to the supplier. At the end of the day, we do the last mile delivery. During the process and the journey, we happen to have a government trust on our digital platform. And this year, the government want to give subsidy worth $150 million to farmers for fertilizer. So they are going to leverage on our data system, Kilimo Data Hub platform, to deliver inputs to last mile and compute all payments, and the system is already integrated with a banking payment system. So all of this activity will be done digitally this year. We already reach out more than 1 million farmers in Tanzania, with the expectation of enroll more than 5 million farmers, whereby we can leverage to scale our product Kilimo Akiba. Our revenue stream is commissioned from savings, the savings that we are mobilizing. We have arrangement with FSP, TCB Bank, and the CRDB Bank, where they give us a commission for deposit mobilization. We have sales commission from input suppliers, where we link them with a buyer who is a farmer. We also starting a new pilot project with Finca, whereby we are going to lend to this smallholder farmer. And our platform now is also creating the credit scoring, and the engine is already developed. So FSP will be able now to have credit scoring from the farmers that we are served. I think we have challenges which also we encounter during the process and the projection that we want to do. The customer acquisition cost is very high, so that's why we leverage on the program that we have with the government, the subsidy program, whereby we can get few farmers, at least 1 million farmers, into our platform. The government already agreed to share those information with us through CRDB partnership. So we are going to have at least 1 million plus farmer who are going to have our services in the future after the subsidy program end. So that's in nutshell, that's what we BusyTech do. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Joe. Actually, I'll take it back now just to thank you for your presentation and to introduce another example that we will hear from a partner of the Scale2Save program. Fash, thank you so much for joining us. This will be an experience from Nigeria on innovative digital platform for smallholder farmers as well. And then we will have a Q&A section for all of these presentations on ag finance solutions. So Fash, if you can turn on your camera if you would like, and also your mic, the floor is yours. Thank you. We will move the slides for you.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you very much. And it's been a very long day. I hope we are all still active, right? Okay. All right, I'll quickly just share with you FCMB experience in developing innovative solution, digital solution for smallholders farmer. For context and background, my name is Shamsuddin Fashola. I'm the divisional head for retail banking for FCMB. FCMB Limited is one of the banks in Nigeria. We play actively in the retail space up to the financial inclusion level. And that's why we're involved in this program in the first instance. Please go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So why are we interested in this business generally, especially the agric subsector of the economy? For us, we see agric as an ecosystem with a lot of pain points. Also, for context, agric contributes about 30% to Nigeria's GDP. So it's an important part of Nigeria's economy. And this economy has a lot of potential to grow because it's still largely rural-based. It's still largely at that elementary stage where we only handle subsistence farming, very little to do with value adding to the product or produce, and low level of exportation of the finished product. So we see opportunity along the value chain that needs to be addressed. But for us to take advantage of this opportunity, we also need to address some of the pain points that these farmers face. Some of them is the farmers do not have access to pre-production, production, value-added service to optimize output of their product. Essentially, in the farming process, they do not have access to the right equipment, they do not have access to the right advice, the right inputs and all that. There's also a significant portion of farmers, either cooperative or pure unorganized, are financially excluded. And we saw this a lot when we went to the field with this project. They are actively doing financial transactions, but they are not financially included. So they have their own way of savings, their own way of raising funds amongst themselves through cooperative and all that in their own little organized way, but they're very unstructured. Insufficient financial literacy. Yes, they want to do a whole lot, but they're not financially literate to do it with their fund, especially the fact that their income is seasonal in nature. How do you then even out their expenditure over that income that is seasonal in nature? How do you educate them so that they can plan their income over a period of time? Of course, they do it in their own crude way, but there's a standard and formal way of doing this and sustainable way of doing it. Some financial institutions do not engage farmers, of course, because of the challenges around how do you reach them, how do you organize them, and how do you take care of their needs, because they are far from the city and the cost to serve is usually very high because hey, most banks are in the city, these guys are in the rural areas. How do you open a branch to service, let's say 1,000 people? So the cost to serve usually is very high. And a formal financial institution will not typically go into those places. Most extensions is currently rendered by donors. So most of the training and extension services that they get today are offered by donors. So we think we can put a structure in place that is sustainable and also profitable, in quotes now, for both players in the industry. Can I please go to the next slide? Next slide. So the solution that we have brought, or that we thought could solve all these problems in one, is combination of a digital platform and investment in the last mile. So we think the combination of that investment in last mile through agency banking and a digital aggregation platform that seeks to bring all the key players in the value chain together would go a very long way in solving that problem. Next slide, please. So what we did was to, under the WSBI project, for us to develop that agent network that would start with recruiting those farmers and bringing them together under the financial services. Because we believe that if we don't bring them together under a structure, a financial service structure, we probably will not be able to add value to them. So the first thing that we did was to extend our agency banking services to the farmers. And the model that we use, I'm going to explain that in the next slide. On top of that, we also developed what we call Easy Club Engine. What that engine does is an aggregator platform where the farmers the input providers, some service management structure, the seedling provider, the fertilizer providers, and all that. We're able to bring them together under the same umbrella, under the same digital platform. For example, if a farmer needs, maybe he needs a tractor for small expanse of land, all the farmer needs to do is to go on the app. So I will explain how that works later anyways. Is to go on the app or USSD and request for that service. So we have one of the partners, for example, is Traxi. Traxi is responsible, or they have an entity that deals with farm mechanization and all that. They can help the farmers. So what that platform has done so far with about 70,000 farmers onboarded is to allow interaction along the value chain of the farmers. Please go to the next slide so that I can explain how we're able to use the existing structure of the farmers to also build that agent network. So we're not building this outside the structure that they understand or they are used to. We use the existing structure. For example, we have, which is the, this is not coming through very well. That's quite tiny, but I can explain that. So what we have is to use the key value chain players as the master agents. So the off-takers, the aggregators, the anchor scheme managers, so some other, to use them as the master agents. So those farmers working for each of these key value chain providers are now recruited. They now recruit the farmers under them as account holder. So that helped us to reach all those farmers. And during the period of this program, we were able to open about 150,000 accounts, 152,000 to be specific. And these are largely about 80% of 95% of them actually are new to financial institution, are new to financial inclusion customers. And what we also did differently was because documentation is also an issue. One of the wrong impressions that most of us had about the farmers is that majority of them, they have low transacting capacity. That is, they do not have a lot of finance to open accounts. When we got to the field, we also realized that a lot of them have huge potential to deposit money and to transact and save. So we now had the problem of how do we then handle KYC issue. In Nigeria, you are required to have bank verification number for you to have a bank account. And what we did then was then to get some of those equipment straight to this master agent who helped us to onboard them on the bank verification number. So that helped a lot in terms of getting those farmers on board. I hope I'm still within time. Okay, so and with that, we're able to recruit a lot of them. In terms of result that we also got, which is quite important for us, we got 152,000 new farmers on board. And the interesting part of it, because I listened to the earlier discussion, the last set of discussion around how to get these customers, the farmers, active. Interestingly, we got about 57% of them to be active. Compared to our normal banking transaction, where the active rate is about 40%, we actually got a lot more. And that also speaks to what Professor James said earlier on the quality of social interactions. Because we brought in people that they are quite used to as their master agent, as their agent, so they are able to interact with them. We also have roving staff, we call them roving agents, who also goes around to educate the farmers, also to recruit them on board. So in terms of when they have that kind of interaction, you always get a better active rate in terms of transaction and savings on the platform. As part of the result, we also got about 2,000 agents in the process set up in those rural areas just to address the needs of the farmers. And of course, in terms of deposit, we also exceeded our expected target for that. Let's go to the last slide to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that we also see. Next slide, please. So in terms of opportunities, we see the opportunity to grow this space. There's still so much that we can do. As a bank, It's also tough. I heard my last speaker to say it's quite expensive to recruit these farmers and also to carry out the kind of engagement that we're having. But the good thing is that after the MasterCard Foundation and WSBI sponsorship, the customers that we acquire, the structure that we put in place are sustainable. They are self-sustainable. The technology platform that built can self-sustain itself. The customers that we have acquired and the agent structure that we have built are also self-sustaining. So that's a good one. The only thing that we just need to extend it beyond what we currently have. We also saw improved savings balances by the farmers. Technology awareness, now a lot of them can now use their phone to do transactions, USSD, and some of them that are a little lettered can then do the app, can use mobile app. Opportunities for more products. For example, today, about 20% of them now have access to loan. So we use our digital loan platform to extend loan to them, tracking their transaction behavior, their savings pattern, age of account opening and all that. We use that to determine how much we can extend to them. And today, about 20% of them now have access to loan without needing to look for collateral or guarantor to have access to the loan. In terms of challenges, right? Connectivity issue is an issue. Telecommunication is still a challenge in this part of the world. So as you go deep and deep into rural areas, you have connectivity challenges. Change of mindset. A couple of them still require some education for them to leave their cooperative setting to join a formal financial institution. I think it's the journey, right? We're going to get there as we continue to do this and they get more and more people in their own environment embracing financial inclusion, others will surely join. Communication barrier is also big. Nigeria is a multilingual country with about 300 languages and all that. So we tend to have that barrier as we move on, but we try to work with local communities so the agent in your community understands your language. So that we were able to break some of those barriers. But from the center, trying to train them, it's a big challenge, trying to break that communication barrier. Financial literacy is key. We need to continue to do this. And lastly, ability to get affordable funding is also very important. Interest rate is quite high in this part of the world, and the farmers' margin sometimes is not that huge. So we need to keep looking for those affordable funding to meet their needs. Thank you. I will pause a little bit. I try to work within the time so that I will pause for question and answer.
Thank you so much, Fash. And please keep posting those questions for the presenters in the chat. And Fash, it's a nice segue. You gave me a nice segue to what question that we have for our guests from DSS Ghana, another Savings at the Frontier partner. Albert, if you're on and you can put your camera on or mic on, can you tell us from your experience, why is it so challenging to work with smallholder communities? We've heard a little bit, but what have we not understood so well? What can you add from the DSS experience?
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it's for me. Thanks. Sorry.
Hello, thank you very much. Please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So DSS, like Hannah said, is into systems, and we are using the tool, the proximity tool, we've integrated it into our system, and it's helping us with our work with the farmers. Now, to address your question, let me look at smallholder farmers as people who are cropping 2 acres of land, less than 10 acres, or let's say less than 20 acres. And we've been working with these people very closely to understand what the challenges are. And here are a few things we realized that most of them don't do the farming as full-time. It's part-time and seasonal. In Ghana, you can have 2 main seasons, but most of them do only 1 season. So on the side, they do some trading, they do some other work. And so they don't get the best out of the farming. Now, when you look at the farming they do, it's also very high cost. They employ labor that is very high cost, and in most cases, not very efficient. They buy input from retailers that make it very high cost. And then because they are not taking the farming commercially serious, they don't do the best practices for it. All these things culminate into not the best of yields. So their revenue is not very high. And when you net it against the cost, they don't make so much. Meanwhile, some of them get loans or some form of money from other people to get into the farming. And when they are paid back these things, farming then doesn't become attractive. And it's sad that we rely on very, very small people who are doing farming that is not attractive to them. On the other hand, we did a pilot with a commercial farmer who, because of the seriousness of his approach to the farming, he keeps growing and getting things better, getting inputs cheaper. And we are seeing his revenue growing. When we met him, he had done 35 acres of land. Then he did 150 acres. Now he's doing about 900 acres. And so there is something missing, and that is the attractiveness of the farming based on the profitability of it. If we can make it less labor intensive and more attractive for smallholder farmers, and by congregating them in a certain fashion, I'm sure that a lot more people will go into it and eventually grow their farm size. And that is a model we are trying to explore. We've not gotten it right yet. We're seeing the bits and pieces come together, but we think there's a lot of work in that space. I should mention that to make it sustainable and get people who are doing it attracted to doing it and sustain doing it.
Great, Abed, thank you so much for your comment and for joining us for this section. It's really interesting, and I think some of these platforms, are doing just that, bringing the farmers together and try to take advantage of some of those economies that can be done through platforms. Since we are in the Q&A portion of this section on Spotlight on Ag Finance, I have 2 questions that I collected through the chat that were not already answered in the chat. One question is for Shu and one question is for Fash. So I will start with the question on for Shu that was on elaborating on credit rating criteria and how the shift was made from traditional process and criteria. And then Fash, the question for you is if you can speak a little bit more to the cost benefit of the model that FCNB is using. So I think Shu is still with us. So if you can unmute and turn on your camera on the question on credit rating criteria.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diana. Yeah, what we are doing in terms of credit scoring, we are collecting alternative data that bank cannot collect all the time. It's easy for the bank to lend to the farmer through groups here in Tanzania. That is a traditional way. So sometimes individual farmers are not getting advantage of getting those loans until the group leader is allowing. So from individual data collections, like sales, the time farmer collecting their produce, take them to the market, to lend to that particular farmer. But again, we are also leveraging to these extension officers who are always working close to the farmer to make sure that farmer are qualified to get a collateral, like lend. There are stages that Tanzania allowed the land to be one of the collateral. So we also mapping the farm at the moment, and the group leaders together with village leaders, they are all witness that farmer owned that particular land, and that data is going to our digital platform. So together with all other information that we collected during the saving process, when the farmer saved for inputs, we just capture the data because the platform is already integrated with the bank. So we have a financial profile of a particular farmer. To know the farmer who is eligible and what kind of financial product in terms of loan they are going to offer. Hello.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful, and thank you, Shu, for clarifying this. And I know Fash clarified his question in the chat, and he had to leave. So please post additional questions in the chat. We will answer them there. As we are getting close to the end of the event, I would like to turn our attention now that we had an opportunity to learn about the various tools and research and resources used by these two programs. We would like to end on that note, and Jenny, if you can put up the slides again. We would like to let you know that there are lots of resources, case studies, publications, tools that these two programs have published during the 6 years, but also there will be a few more upcoming. And one that we would like to spotlight on right now, and I would like to invite Veselina to the stage, to the virtual stage for that, is on change management. So Veselina, if you can turn on your camera and your mic, I would like to give you the floor to give us a little bit of a flavor of what this handbook contains. And then I know you would like to share an example of how one of your partners has used this in practice in their operations. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Diana. I hope everyone can see me and hear me, and people are still awake after such a long day. And I also hope I will not be putting anyone to sleep now with the presentation that is coming now. So I hear I need to wake up a few people. So before I get to this slide, just let me give you the background to why we are throwing another change management handbook on the market, because I believe there are already quite a few out there. But when we were starting the agenda for change with our partners, we felt that there was nothing out there that really explains how change is happening at the institutional level. And we also believe that any digital transformation and any reset for becoming a savings-driven organization, when you're working with a microfinance institution, for example, or for becoming more customer-centric in general, this should be accompanied by a change management coaching process. And here's why. So we've been running larger scale multi-country initiatives for the past 15 years. And what we've seen in previous initiatives is that when we purely focus on performance and KPIs, we really fail to capture the organizational improvements and the personal development that is introduced by partners throughout such large-scale initiatives. So, creativity, innovation, transformation, skill set development, and behavioral changes, they're not very well captured. And so this is about providing tools for understanding the pathways, the various pathways of internal change. And we really believe that we have to look more at the human factor and integrate the human factor into program planning and implementation and monitoring to significantly see how the effectiveness of such initiatives can be improved. So what we wanted to achieve is that the projects we were working with move from a pure project mode to a change mode. And that is to really focus on the human transformation and not just on a technical change or a linear change. And so the guidebook we will be putting out next month is a snapshot of this journey. And it collects our experience. It provides tips and tools that Scale2Save use to support 5 partner FSPs in their adoption of customer-centric approaches and strategies. You will also find some case studies that are illustrating how 3 of our partner FSPs used the change management strategies and how these strategies help them to achieve their business goals. So the 3 case studies that you will find are from Advance in Côte d'Ivoire, where we supported them in their digital transformation process. You will also find the case study from BRAC Uganda Bank Limited, where we supported them again in their digital transformation, but also to build a savings-driven environment, given that the bank had recently come from a microfinance perspective. And you will also find a case study from Lapo Microfinance Bank in Nigeria, where we helped the institution to become more customer-centric and savings-driven. You will find a description of the methodology that we used. It's called the 5 universes, and different tools that we used during each of these universes. So the first universe is called catalyzing change. And here we found it very helpful to use the CGAP Customer Centricity Maturity Assessment tool, which is a very easy, simple, open source tool that helps understand at what point the institution is in their customer-centric transformation. And it helps you understand for each employee that you are surveying how that employee perceives the customer-centric journey of the institution. The next universe looks at boosting the ecosystem. So how can we bring all the stakeholders on board that are part of the transformation? So not just looking at the financial service provider, but also looking at the channel networks such as agents, looking at other ecosystem players such as farm associations, or if you work with a micro-insurance provider, bring this micro-insurance provider also on board. So Lapo, for example, ran a 500 people customer service forum where they brought on all partners, all stakeholders, trying to understand what would make a difference in their world of work and in serving the customers from their perspective. And then all these findings from the customer service forum were brought together for the 3rd universe, where all the partners were co-designing a strategy of change. And this strategy of change was recorded in a toolkit that captured the different levels of intervention, different sign-off stages. It highlighted who the champions of change are, and it also allowed the FSP to track the change throughout the different processes. And so the 4th universe is the monitoring of progress, which is obviously very important. And we deployed with the partner FSPs a baseline and an endline survey to help map out the correlation between different developments and change interventions. So we could see whether the dips or the spikes in deposit mobilization, for example, were related to a intervention of change at the institutional level. And the fifth universe, then, this is helps the bank to stay on track and to decide whether they have to go back to the drawing board to reiterate some of the interventions. The people involved in designing this agenda for change were Detox and Grow and ECOS Communication and the WSBI Change Management Coach. And the handbook will come out next month. We also have a case study that already highlights how Lapo Microfinance Bank was leading change to reach low-income savers in Nigeria. And I will paste the link into the chat box. And so I hope you bear with us until the publication is out. And with that, I'm passing back to you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Veselina. And I appreciate that you mentioned the human factor because it was brought up quite a bit in the earlier presentations, also on what customers appreciate. So that this really, that human factor, human connection, human aspects of all of our interactions reflects itself back into the people within the institutions that we're working with. So that I appreciate that point. Next, I just want to briefly give our participants a flavor of what other resources they can find on the two websites that I shared the links in the chat, the two websites, the one from Scale2Save and Savings at the Frontier, where you can find all of the resources that we had mentioned and also the upcoming resources. So this is a preview of other resources on the Scale2Save website, and then now on the screen from Savings at the Frontier. This is just the image from three most recent publications, and then, as I mentioned in the chat, you find the links to the various websites where these resources are posted. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we will share these slides with everyone who joined today, as well as the recording. So you will have these as well in there. And without any further ado, I would like to bring us to a close. And for that, I would like to invite Hannah and Veselina again to give us any final takeaways, any key messages that they may want to share as part of, at the end of these two programs. So we can take the slides off and then invite Veselina. I see you on my screen, so if you would like to be the first one to share your final messages, final key takeaways, and then we will invite Hannah as well. Thank you, Veselina.
Sure. So there are 3 points that I'd like to make. And the first is that throughout Scale2Save, and also given that Scale2Save happened in the midst of a pandemic, we could see that savings are a key contributor to resilience, but also that savings can be an enabler to wider outcome goals, such as growth of small businesses and gender equality or women empowerment. And I want to give you a few examples that arose from our 5-country customer research, just very briefly. So we saw that what people are mostly using their savings for are savings for unexpected expenses, for a specific household-related goal, and for business purposes. So that were the 3 key goals that people were saving for. We also found that on average, about 70% of our 1.3 million customers that we reached could draw upon their savings to improve household well-being or their financial resilience. Here, young males would more frequently use their savings for business-related purposes, while young female more often use savings for consumption smoothing and for other household-related expenses. So that would include education, food, utilities, and medical bills. So that really tells us that we need to tailor products according to the needs of the different groups we are serving. And so not just different income groups, but also different by gender and age. We also saw that almost 50% of the 1.3 million customers that Scale2Save reached used their savings for investment purposes, and most of the times for business-related investments. And these were mostly informal businesses, such as trading, retail, and farming. And we also could see that savings helped our smallholder farmers in Côte d'Ivoire to sustain and grow their businesses. So this is really a call to really revive the importance of savings when designing services for low-income populations. Secondly, I would say that learning programs with a substantial research budget continue to be crucial, also to better understand the remaining barriers. I mean, we should not close our eyes before the fact that we did not achieve that all customers we're serving were active. So for Scale2Save, non-usage rates averaged at 53% and ranged from 43 to 65% across the board, mostly linked to irregular income cycles in the farm sector, but also linked to not appropriate product design and issues with access. Thirdly, I would like to say that sector engagement is really key to making sure we connect with the national financial inclusion strategies. So WSBI, through its network of member institutions, and in Africa, we're talking about 34 institutions alone, and also through the ecosystem partners on the ground, such as the central banks, the FSDs, the banking associations, skill set builders, and so on, has allowed Scale2Save to leverage these partnerships and engage on program learnings, and that was really, really very insightful. But also, I think we have to ensure continuity through these engagements by making the learning products publicly available, such as the customer outcome framework in Uganda that we were talking about earlier today, that Avisha was presenting and Alex from BOU was discussing, and such as the persona segmentation toolkit that we developed in Nigeria that Hannah was presenting, and that will now be hopefully also disseminated through Athena, and where we would be really very happy to continue developing this tool for other financial markets. And so these are both examples for segmenting customer data for design as well as for outcome measurement, as we really think that the data-driven evidence will continue to be key in understanding the impact that we are making. And just a last note that obviously we're very grateful to the Mastercard Foundation for funding this journey and for the many contributors and collaborators along the way. We would have loved to have more time, to be very honest, for putting out all the learnings that come out of a 6-year initiative such as Scale2Save. So Savings at the Frontiers had the luxury of collecting and disseminating throughout the whole year. Scale2Save only ended a month ago, and we still have so much learning to share. So we hope you keep on looking out for the publications that are still coming out. And we obviously also hope to be able to scale some of our successful solutions for low-income farmers and women with a new initiative in the future. So thanks again for this journey. It was quite a ride, and I'll pass over to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Veselina. I think you've said everything. That was also important for me to say. Maybe just one thing. I think working on innovation and technology is really important, and it's not just the financial sector, but it's other thematic areas across the development sector. And I'm maybe talking to the funders and donors and consultants in the room right now, but I think the innovations and technology that you can work on with private sector actors can really solve challenges that haven't been solved by government players or by the NGOs, but to a degree. So there's a big potential, and I think it's what we've learned in the Savings at the Frontier program is that it's so difficult to support innovation processes, and that we need to get better at understanding how to support private market actors in doing these innovations and developing innovative solutions to problems that have been around for a long time. And I think it's about, I mean, innovation drivers and working with organizations and honoring partnerships and being adaptive and allowing partners to be wrong and to experiment and to fail. And I think that's the role of donors and like the MasterCard Foundation, to then say, okay, we are financing the learning. So I think that's a big opportunity, and it's good that we're getting better at adaptive management frameworks and working adaptively with partners on solving these problems. So I think all the learning that come out of programs like Scale2Save and like Savings at the Frontier in that direction can be so valuable for employment programs, for agriculture programs, rural development programs. It's not only the financial sector that is working with technology at the moment and trying to find digital solutions. So I just want to say that our adaptive management knowledge products and the innovation drivers knowledge products really should be read by not just people working in inclusive finance. That's it from me.
Thank you so much. Well said, Veselina and Hannah. That's a really nice way to help us close this event. I'm dropping in the chat a very brief event survey for people who would like to help us with comments in there as well. And at this point, I would like to thank you to the two program teams, Scale2Save and Savings at the Frontier, to their partners, to today's presenters, and to everybody who was able to join for this final live learning event. As Veselina said, there is so much more coming out of these programs that we will help share, and hopefully those resources, tools, insights will make their ways to you, and you will share with your networks as well. As a community, it's important to make sure that these insights get into the hands of the people who are able to act on them. So we're very keen on making sure that happens. So with that, really lots of thanks to everyone, and you'll hear more from us as well with additional resources, tools, and events. Thank you so much for joining us.